Welcome, everybody. Welcome. We'll just go ahead and give a few minutes for people to join. Let me make sure I can see the chats. Oh, yeah. So let me know where you're joining from. Also, while we are, we'll just give like probably 2 or 3 more minutes. But any questions you have, go ahead and put them down in the Q&A, because sometimes I miss them in the chat. Like the chat keeps on moving. So at the end, I can go down to the Q&A and make sure to capture everybody's questions. Looking at my notes. I don't want to forget anything. Okay, I sent a message. Okay, cool. I see your guys' Q&A. Oh, it says chat is disabled. Well, that's why we're not getting any chats. And that's not going to be any fun. Let me see. Panelists can chat with everyone. Attendees can chat. It says with no one. Okay, here we go. Attendees can chat with everyone. All right, you guys want to try it again? Someone want to try the chat for me? Yes. All right. What's up, Melanie? Oh, hey, everybody. All right, cool. Okay. I'm going to just read through these questions. All right. Hey, Melanie, joining us from Vienna. We have Jana Lee from Kentucky. Welcome. Welcome, Faith. Welcome, Don. Welcome, Madison. Okay. Oh, you guys, the multitasking that these online talks require is so funny. I'll just clean up the Q&A right now. Okay, to the we have somebody who anonymously asked a fertility question, so I've read that. Yeah, and we'll definitely get to that. What's up, Houston? Oakland, that's my hometown. That's where my dad's from. Empress Naima. London, welcome, joining us from London, Maria. Oh, we have Juicy Yoni Health. Oh yeah, that's Oakland. That sounds like Oakland. Right now I'm in Hawaii. Welcome, Chiara from Italy. Tanisha from Canada. Welcome, Liz from Chile. Yenny from Texas. Madison from Northern Cali. From Colorado. Camille from Colorado. Welcome, everybody. Well, I didn't have a chance to send out the reminder email, so good on all of you that you guys remembered the time and came on. So I guess I will go ahead and get started, and this is recorded. So if anybody needs to leave early, it will be recorded. I'll send out the recording afterwards. Um, Welcome, Marcella from Australia. So during the talk, if I say something and then that piques your interest and you have a question, go ahead and type in the Q&A below. And then that helps because the chat just keeps on going and I don't always find the question afterwards. Usually I save them for the end, okay? But I answer all the questions at the end if you have if you have the time. Okay, so my name is Kelly Garza. I am the founder of the Paris Steam Hydrotherapy Institute, which I call the Steamy Chick Institute. It is the first and only institute for the research of the health benefits of vaginal steaming. I got, let's see, I like through the Paris Steam Hydrotherapy Institute, I do education. So I educate on the health benefits of steaming. I do research and I also do training and I certify steam practitioners. So that's me. The name of my little brand is Steamy Chick. I make herbs. I used to make saunas. And that's how I come here. I have been a continuing education provider for acupuncturists with the NCCAOM. I've been a continuing education provider for midwives with the Midwifery Education Accreditation Council. And I've trained over 1,200 practitioners worldwide. So that's a little bit about me. So we're going to talk about, the name of this talk is Beginner's Guide to Vaginal Steaming. And one of the things that I noticed is that, when talking about the health benefits of steaming or the research, there's always people who are like, this is great. Like, how do I get started? And so there's a couple questions, and these are the most common questions that we get. So I've structured this talk that I'll just answer those questions for you all. Okay, so who are you guys? Are you guys newbies? Like who here has not steamed? That's what I'm interested in. Do we have like that thing where you raise a hand, or you guys can just say in the thing? Okay, Faith says she's a newbie. So we got newbies. I'm interested in like, yeah, how many? I know there's probably some practitioners here. Okay, we have a lot of new folks. Okay, cool. So let's get to, you guys can keep on letting. Oh, hey Natasha, she says she's a steam facilitator. Madison shares, I have not steamed, been longing to start for years since hearing you talk with Christy Dawn. Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like, it's, there's some things we got to work out to get started steaming, right? And I know because, my friends and so forth who want to try steaming, like, I know I got to, often walk them through that process. And so that's what this course is going to be, is kind of discussing those different things. So the first thing, the first question and the most common question I get is, can steaming help with XYZ problem? Okay, so I think it's, again, it's a great question. And, when answering it, there's some things that I take into consideration. And number one is that there aren't a lot of studies on steaming. And another word I use for it is pelvic steaming, by the way, you guys. I use vaginal steaming usually because that's what people are familiar with, but I call it pelvic steaming. So there aren't a lot of studies on pelvic steaming. What there is, some of the studies that there are have actually been focused on just classic, like documenting that people are steaming. So it's not necessarily studies on what steaming can do. And the type of medical system that we have set up, well, I'm in the US, so I'm mainly going to be talking about in the US, but it applies in other places as well, is that you're not supposed to make any claims. You're not supposed to make any medical claims. Like I can't be like, drink cranberry juice, it helps with infections. Like that's a medical claim, okay? So I'm about to say steaming helps with, I believe that steaming helps with a lot of things, or steaming may help with a lot of different problems, okay? And so, it is hard to talk about steaming without making medical claims, because steaming does seem to be able to help with a myriad of issues, like almost, all the gynecological issues that people are facing. So just keep that in mind, that if I say, well, it may help with, or it may reduce fibroids, and so forth. That's why, I have to give, I have to make sure that we understand that there aren't, like, any large medical studies that have been done that prove this. Okay. And also, it's good to be humble, because people do have different results, and steaming might help one person, and then maybe not help the other, right? And that's something that we can talk about as well, is like why, like making sure that the steaming is going to be effective. But in general, there are some resources that we can use to figure out what steaming is used for, and how it can help, right? And if steaming can help with, this specific problem. So the first one that is interesting goes back and looks at how steaming has been used historically. So the first resource is the Vaginal Steam World Map. And this is a little research project that I've been doing for a while. And it is that when I hear of records of steaming, like ancient records of steaming, I've been recording them and putting them onto a map. And this map is actually available on my website. And you can go what I was originally doing was, I heard steaming was Guatemalan, then I heard it was Korean, and then I heard it was from Ghana. And I was just like, these are three very different countries without a direct trade route that I know of, so I was like, so who learned it from who, and so I was fascinated in, like, the different places. And then I continued to hear about steaming in more and more different places. I heard it was Cambodia, a Cambodian practice. And then I heard that it was, I was reading this Hawaiian herbal book, and I saw a description of steaming in it, right? And so I continued to keep these records. And when you look at the world map, what's really cool to see is that steaming was practiced all over the world. There's not really a place where there was a population that steaming wasn't practiced. It's not like concentrated in sub-Saharan Africa or concentrated in Southeast Asia. Like, steaming was used everywhere. So, and some of these records go back thousands of years. So what was interesting as I was documenting the different places that I was finding record of steaming was that steaming was used for different things in different places. Like, for example, in Korea, steaming is used for menstrual complications. I heard of steaming in Ghana being used for postpartum care. I heard of steaming being used in Tanzania before intimacy. I was like, oh, interesting. I heard of steaming being used after sexual violations in Haiti, right? And so it's like, okay, wait a minute. People are using this for different things. Oh my gosh, there's this German book where a midwife says that you can steam with hay flowers before, like, during labor. I was like, okay, interesting. So there's, like, it was used for a lot of different things in different places. Now, there are some places where it seems to have been used for everything. Like in Korea, they were using steaming for everything. They were using it for postpartum and for, like for menstrual complications and for, so they use it in all of the instances. And then in some places, it's just used for postpartum. And the most common use of steaming everywhere in the world was postpartum. So everybody was using it for postpartum. And then some people were using it for, for different situations. So Cornelia is writing in and she says, yes, that's what they do here in Germany. This is the only steaming they seem to know of. Fascinating, and thank you for sharing that. Yeah, it's so cool, because there's like other places where they would have never even thought, they're using steaming for postpartum, but they would have never thought to use it for labor preparation. So the other interest, I guess I'll also share with you on that world map, I think I was interested in where steaming is still commonplace. I only learned about steaming when I was in my 30s. So it was interesting to me to kind of understand where and what countries steaming, there are countries where steaming is still commonplace and what countries those are. So does anybody know like the places where steaming is commonplace? There's like probably 4 or 5 countries that I could say steaming is pretty commonplace. One is Haiti. If we have any Haitians here, shout out. Haitians know about steaming. Number 2 is Korea. In Korea, they have a spa culture, and it's very common at the spa. They might have women's spas. Oh, Ethiopia. Okay, Ferial writes in and she says, we use smoke here in Ethiopia. It's called weba. I was gonna say Eritrea. I'm only gonna say that because one of my Ethiopian friends wasn't very familiar with it, but it appears to be pretty commonplace in that part of the world. And yes, Ferial is mentioning that they use smoke. So I consider these to be, okay, so there's different forms of steaming. There's steaming with water, and then there's steaming with smoke, where you would take the herbs and smolder them and then steam with that. I don't really like saying vaginal smoking. I don't think it sounds good. It doesn't sound healthy. But that smoldering with those herbs, I just call it dry steaming because, again, I think we're all familiar with the term vaginal steaming right now. So I'm kind of going from that term. So I said, okay, there's the wet form and the dry form, which is actually how they do it in Korean language. They have one word they use, which is like fumigation. And then they say wet fumigation or dry fumigation. I don't like to use the word fumigation in English, although that would work because it's something that's used for pest control, like, if like a house is infested with bugs. And so I don't think it's like very sexy to say, fumigation of our vaginas. So that's the only reason why I don't use that. But anyways, yeah, so I am discussing, so anyways, under this umbrella, when I'm talking about steaming all over the world, some places use dry steaming, where they're smoldering the herbs, and then some people use wet steaming, and then some places use both, which is really interesting. Suriname is another place where steaming is commonplace in South America, and then also Palau, a country in the South Pacific Islands. Everybody in the country there steams. And let's see, I think those are the locations where I would say, so it was pretty interesting for me when I was just learning about steaming and nobody around me knew about it. I first learned about it in 2011. It was really interesting for me to learn, there are places where steaming is commonplace and everybody knows about it. Okay. So that's one way to learn about steaming, is just to go look at what ancestrally people were using steaming for. And what you'll find is that it was used for a lot of different things. It was used for a lot of different women's health concerns. Okay, the second resource for learning, can steaming help with XYZ problem, is looking at the pelvic steam testimonial database. A couple years ago, me and the practitioners in my program, we came together and we created this database where we could contribute and talk about how steaming had helped us, and that we could have our clients contribute stories about how steaming had helped them, and opened it up to to the community to share and contribute stories about how steaming had helped to them. I actually need to collect some more stories, maybe send out an email or post it on Instagram. But we collected over 100 stories. I think there's 120 stories on there, or cases or records of steaming. And what we did was we would say, okay, what was your initial concern before steaming? How long did you steam? How often did you steam? Did you steam with a practitioner or not a practitioner? What herbs did you use, right? So we got the details about the steaming, and then we said, and then how would you rate your concern after steaming, and so that's what we were looking at. Like, sometimes people had like, if they had menstrual cramps that were disturbing them on a level of 10, then after steaming, how were those menstrual cramps compare? How did it compare? And a lot of times, actually in all cases, people's discomfort came down. So it came from like, say, a 10 to a 5, or a 10 to a 2, or somebody started at a 6 and they came down to a 0. Okay, Yenny, she's telling us that she's from Dominican Republic, and it's so interesting to see how much our culture has lost. We used to incorporate herbs and approach things holistically, where now it's taboo. Wow, it's taboo even to talk about herbs. You can't even sell herbs and forget about midwifery care. I love that people in Haiti still practice this. Yeah, that would make sense. That's one island, so it would make sense that the steaming was commonplace in Dominican Republic too. One of my friends is is Dominican, and she said that her grandma used to steam down by the river and with herbs, and was telling me about it. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, that's you bring up an interesting topic, which is why did steaming get lost in so many places, which is not one of the topics I have for this talk, but I do have a talk. I have a course dedicated to that. It's called Vaginal Steam History and Culture. And it talks about, there's kind of like 4 reasons why steaming started to get lost, or why it's been lost in most of the world. But you know what? It's coming back now because of us, because of all the people here, and the fact that we're bringing it back into our care. Our self-care. Okay, so the pelvic steam testimonial database. So this is also a research project of the Paris Steam Hydrotherapy Institute, my institute. And so, so when you go to steamychick.com, or it will redirect you to steamychick.institute. You can also type in steamychick.institute if you know how to spell it and you don't mind typing more letters. If you go down to the footer, I say our research, and I have these research. I have the vaginal steam world map, and then I have the pelvic steam testimonial database, and then I have the study that I'm about to mention next. Okay, so you guys can all find that research. And then as far as where the course is located, yeah, you'll find that course as well on my website. So the pelvic steam testimonial database was really interesting. Actually, the way that it came about was because there was a steam practitioner in Sweden whose website was flagged by the government as being problematic because she was claiming that steaming had health benefits. And so again, we've had to really learn to be careful with our words. Like, we're not really supposed to say that steaming can help people. We have to say steaming might help people, right? Which is, it's fine, as long as we can still talk. We'll continue to educate about the health benefits, the potential health benefits of steaming. So we created this database. The government said that she had to prove that steaming was in fact beneficial. So during the pelvic steam testimonial database, one of the questions that we asked was, did you find steaming beneficial? And we actually had 100% of the people who said yes. And then we also asked if anybody had any negative side effects of steaming or any harm done by it. And for the most part, we didn't get very much. There were some people who reported like some side effects, maybe somebody got a headache, or maybe somebody's, just there might have been a couple things that were reported. And there are side effects of steaming. That's why I like people to go through my classes, and learn like the different side effects to be aware of. Sometimes people might get a headache afterwards. This is often because if they don't hydrate while steaming, if somebody steams and has their, sometimes they have heavier cramps after steaming, but this is because they usually have tampons in, and it's really important to let it flow after you steam, because it gets the old stagnation in the uterus loose, and then it needs to come out. And so when it's blocked up, it can cause cramping, even though that's again, that's usually only something that happens if somebody is steaming and is not aware of the proper uterine proper period care. That said, again, this is why I like to train people, because you can't really steam and see improvements without also having to do menstrual care and follow healthy menstrual care guidelines in order to be able to allow the flushing. So anyhow, so that's a second resource, is you guys can go and read the pelvic steam testimonial database. This is much better than coming and asking me, hey, can steaming help with fertility? Go and read the stories. You have people in there who are like, I got, who share fertility stories, who share postpartum, who share labor, who share fibroids, right? So it's great to be able to go and read these records of real people who contributed to this database and exactly how steaming helped them, how long it took, what route that they took, And this is a protection, again, because if for me to just make an announcement, steaming is reducing, steaming reduces fibroid size, I can't do that, but I can look at a case study. In this case, this person steamed and their fibroids reduced, so it's possible that if somebody else steams, that they might see the same results, right? This is like kind of just vernacular, the importance of words, and honestly, the fact that that steaming herbs and these practices, they're not illegal, but since they're not part of the medical system, we have to be careful about how we talk about it. Edith. Oh, hey, what's up, Edith? Edith's one of my clients that I'm working with. She said, I got lightheaded with a minor headache after steaming, but the benefit from steaming was greater, and I just continued drinking more water, and that went away. Okay, great. Madison says she needs to head out. She'll catch the replay. And then Chiara is asking a question. I would say put that question in the Q&A so that I can make sure that I get to it after the talk, or at the end of the talk. Oh, no worries. Yeah, it's just help. I don't want to lose the question because the chat, goes, it keeps on going. Okay, so then the third resource to learn about steaming, I did do a study. It's called the 4th trimester vaginal steam study. And it was all about steaming for postpartum. We looked at a group of people who steamed postpartum versus a group of people who didn't steam postpartum. And we followed them, and we used this, we measured the same indicators, and we found out that steaming appeared to be, the steam user group appeared to be much better off than the non-steam group when it came to lochia, like the discharge, when it came to their stitches, when it came to the contractions, when it came to their blood pressure, and when it came to their blood pressure and heart rate levels, when it came to their bowels. The steam group was just outperformed the other group in, like, in every way. Weight loss, pounds lost, as well as, inches off of the the waist. It was just incredible. That one really blew the other group out of the water. So we have some very specific indicators there that we can look at and say, oh, in this trial study, it looked like steaming was beneficial for these things. Okay, so those are some ways to know, can steaming help with such and such problem? Also, I've been working on my website and to make it more user friendly, and there's a search bar at the top of the website. Type in whichever issue that you have, and it will return some results. So if it's bacterial vaginosis, type in bacterial vaginosis, and then what I've done is I've cataloged like all the pelvic steam testimonial database entries. So those will pop up there that you can read, the entries just about that. As well as I've categorized, we have all these 1,200 steam practitioners. Well, they all have their own steam experiences. So I put those into my search engine on my website so that you can read the practitioners who have dealt with bacterial vaginosis and the database entries. And then I added another menu that's called help topics, where you can go and select the different help topics in order to read steam users' experiences with those things. But in general, what I want to say is, yes, if you're asking about steaming, yes, it can probably help whatever help topic that you're looking for. From my experience, steaming appears to be beneficial from everything A to Z, all the gynecological issues and obstetrical issues that we deal with. Okay, so let's go on to the next question then. So what herbs do I need? Oh yeah, and go ahead. Actually, you guys are asking about some particular issues, so maybe I'll answer some of these right now. Oh yeah, one last thing, steaming is great for maintenance. It's good for, like, in South Korea, it's used to be able to prevent any problems from occurring. So it's encouraged to steam, or I think it's common practice to steam at least once a month after the period, in order to make sure that everything else is comes out and that there aren't any problems along the way. So it can also be used as maintenance. Yeah. Or sorry, as maintenance, as a preventative practice. Okay, so we have somebody who's asking, I was detected with cervical ectropion, glandular eversion of the cervix. I suffer from frequent infections, bacterial and fungal, and it's been an issue for fertility. I would like to start steaming to increase my fertility, but I don't know if I can do it because of the ectropion and infections. I don't know what glandular eversion of the cervix means. So, again, I'm not a medical doctor, but I'll take a moment and just to read up what we're talking about. Because, this is steam, so we will be able to determine whether it's steaming. Oh, it's drooping. Okay, yeah, there's no reason why steaming can't be used with that condition. And, steaming is used in, and for the person who asked, feel free to, if you wanted to put more explanation, but steaming is used in skincare because it helps to make skin tighter. So if this is a situation where there's a drooping, then again, I don't think that there's any reason why steaming couldn't be used. And based on the fact that steaming has been beneficial for skin toning and tightening and things like that, it's also very possible that that the steaming could be beneficial. As far as the infections, so one of the most common critiques against steaming is that doctors think that it will cause a higher rate of infections, but that has not happened. In fact, again, there are, hundreds and thousands of steam users around the world who are saying that their infections went away and don't come back as frequently or never come back, or when they do come back, they're less severe and don't last as long. So that's what we have record of, is a lot of case studies of people whose steaming has helped with infections. And then again, as far as fertility, that is, any menstrual cycle imbalances you want to address in order to be able to help with fertility there, there are a lot of people who steaming helps them address their menstrual cycle imbalances, and then helps with their ability to get pregnant. But again, the goal is not just to get pregnant, is to have a healthy pregnancy and carry to term. So what I encourage is to take 3 to 6 months and work with a trained peristeam hydrotherapist. I have 2 levels of practitioners: my level 1 facilitators and my level 2 peristeam hydrotherapist. I would encourage you to work with a peristeam hydrotherapist, and they'll take 3 to 6 months and really work with you on your cycle and change the herbs from month to month and make sure to address whatever imbalances you have. And then you're able to start trying to conceive again. And that's the way to go, because you don't want to actually just steam and get pregnant and then you still had those imbalances and then the pregnancy doesn't go to term. All right, so I'm going to call that done. Steaming and pharmaceutical considerations. I'm curious about steaming and pharmaceutical considerations. My doctor wants me to try fluoxetine for PMS, and another doctor wants me on an SNRI. Yeah, I've seen steaming help with PMDD, premenstrual dysphoric disorder. Personally, I have, definitely have, some PMS, some classic PMS symptoms, and I do feel like when I steam, it's much better or non-existent, the symptoms that I have, or the irritability and so forth. And then if I don't steam, I find that I have that again. So, because steaming, I think pharmaceuticals are very helpful. They save lives, in different situations. And also they have side effects. They have a lot of side effects. So if you don't need to use them, it's better not to. So I think if you haven't started, again, it's always your choice. I cannot discourage you from taking pharmaceutical or following the advice of your doctors. But if you're interested in a natural route prior, that's normally what I would do, as I would see if naturally you can resolve the issue with steaming. And then you'll be a little bit more informed, like, should you do, so I would try, again, same thing, like really work with a level 2 peristeam hydrotherapist and have that, so they can look at your cycle and see what imbalances are there and give you very targeted steam plans for those imbalances. Usually when it comes to PMS, stagnation is an issue, okay? And so go ahead and get a real targeted steam plan and work on that for 2 to 3 months, and then let that inform whether or not you want to go ahead and take the pharmaceuticals. It's completely up to you. Also, if you want to take the pharmaceuticals and steam, you can do that as well. It doesn't have to be one or the other. If like you're like, I need something right now, and I want to, you know, I think what my doctor is saying is I like his recommendation, and that's what you want to do, then go ahead and do that. And also steam, you know what I mean? So it doesn't have to be one or the other, but there's not any reason why you can't steam if you're taking the medication. You know, my instinct, I do, you know, my father, he had diabetes, and he was taking medication for he got it in his 30s, and he took medication for for over 30 years, and then it led to more and more and more and more, and he was taking, I mean, by the time he passed, he was taking like, you know, over 20 different pharmaceuticals, and sometimes they would, you know, bump each other, they wouldn't work well with each other. And, you know, so I kind of really saw that. And the sad thing is that after time, one of the medications actually ended up causing, you know, organ damage. So again, my experience, my instinct would be to do it naturally if I can, and then, you know, only use a pharmaceutical as a last resort. But you have to do what you want to do. But I would encourage you to steam and take the pharmaceutical, or try steaming first to see then, and see if you see improvement, you know. And if you don't see improvement, then go towards that. If you do see improvement, you might not even be in need of it anymore. And that is something that does tend to happen, or that has happened for a lot of people who try steaming. Okay, these are great questions, you guys. Hello, Ale from Mexico. Okay, let me just do a couple more of these questions about, can steaming help with XYZ? Okay, so Alma recently had a surgery for fibroids. They removed 11 fibroids, an ovarian cyst, and endometriosis, and she's still in recovery. What herbs do you recommend? Okay, that's the next question we're going to talk about during the talk. Steaming, but I will say steaming can be very helpful for recovering from surgery. So I'm really glad that you'll be steaming to help with that recovery. And then because fibroids have such a, fibroids and endometriosis both have a high return rate after surgery, it's really great that you'll be integrating that to hopefully help prevent the return of those things. Does steaming before or during the menstrual cycle assist with cramps? Before. So I don't recommend any steaming with active bleeding at all. So you wouldn't steam during the menstrual cycle. That could cause heavier bleeding. And so it can be dangerous. We don't want to do that. But in order to help with menstrual cramps, equally as important is the period care, and that you, that you follow like menstrual health guidelines that are going to help. So to understand cramps, you have to understand that cramps are happening because there's old blood in there, stagnation in there that can't get out. And so the uterus is contracting to try to get it out. That's what's happening with cramps. One of the reasons why the old stuff can't come out is because of tampons or other period behaviors that, that's kind of disrupt the period, the uterine cleanse. The period is actually a uterine cleanse. And so in order to get a healthy, full, effective uterine cleanse, there are certain behaviors that we sometimes are doing that are making it so that we don't get that full uterine cleanse. It naturally happens, but like cold or plugging products, and there are different things that are causing us not to get that cleanse. So anyhow, steaming can be beneficial, but also equally as important is proper period care guidelines. And I have a free class, you guys, on my website, just because I just feel like it's just so important. Period care guidelines are just so important because a lot of times even just implementing period care guidelines help people resolve like half of the issues that they might have. So I made that just a free class because I feel like we should have all had that information when we were 10. And yeah, it's just the female body and the uterus and the needs of the uterus have been ignored, and that's why I think that there are so many uterine disorders and unhealthy uteruses that are impacting our lives. So on my website homepage, if you look at my classes, there's one called the third class. It's called it's PF3. It's called Womb Cleanse Caretaker, and you can take that class. You'll see that it's $0, and that's a free class, and you can send it to your friends as well. Okay. I would like to know if steaming is recommended in case of polymenorrhea, because I read no, but the information is not clear. So again, I'm not a doctor, so I do have to look up, what these terms mean. Oh, this is a great term. Okay, so frequent menstruation. So short cycles. Okay. Also in case of spotting and menstrual bleeding before and after menstruation, and in case of uterine fibroadenomyosis. Okay, so let me start with the first one. So yes, frequent menstrual bleeding is a contraindication for steaming because steaming opens up the uterus there's a heart, there's a blood vessel that goes directly from the heart to the uterus. It's called the I think the utero-heart, blood vessel or something like that. Okay. So those uterine blood vessels go down to the uterus, and for the most part, they're closed. Okay. And then they open once a month, or once every 28 days. They flush out the uterus. That's the period. And then they close again. Okay. Now there's certain people that don't go, 4 weeks. They don't go 28 days, that their uterus, blood vessels open more often. So they might have periods every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks, or they might have fresh spotting every single day, and I'm talking about fresh bleeding. I'm not talking about brown discharge, which people will also refer to as spot. I'm not talking about brown or black discharge. So what's happening is that the uterine blood vessels are opening or leaking. In the case of spotting, we'll say like they're kind of like the blood is escaping because they're leaking. But in the case of, actual bleeding or 2 periods per month, somebody might call it, they're full on, open and the uterus is bleeding. Okay, so the uterine blood vessels are open, and then the cervix is open enough for this blood to flow out, right? So these all have to do with opening. In order to bleed, there's opening that's going on. Well, steaming causes opening, and and not only that, it's warm, so it causes blood circulation. So if somebody's already bleeding a lot, say they maybe stopped yesterday finally, but they had 2 periods that month, and then now you steam again, the uterus is already struggling to close off this bleeding, and so now you're opening, you're bringing more blood flow to the uterus, you're increasing the speed of the blood flow to the uterus, and you're using steam, which we know can even, like, it was used to be used in mail fraud. They'd take a letter that was closed, glued shut, and you hold steam over it, it opens it. It can even melt that glue and open it, right? So what can happen is that steaming can cause the onset of bleeding in that case. And so it is really important. You can steam, but you have to, so again, what I would recommend is working with one of my level 2 practitioners, peristeam hydrotherapists. They know how to stop the frequent bleeding and make sure that you have first aid to stop bleeding. before you even start steaming. So when you start steaming, if perchance it causes the onset of bleeding, then they would give you herb. You would already have something in the house or on hand to be able to stop that bleeding. So that's the first level. It's just actually that you're going to have to learn first aid to stop bleeding. And there's also behaviors that can cause that might be problematic, and that you might be able to learn. There's different things that you have to learn in order to learn how to stop bleeding. So that's what you have to do before steaming it. And so that's why it's a contraindication. But you can be helped, and there's also other ways to use those herbs through drinking them or doing herbal baths and so forth that can be used until the point that you can start steaming. So don't lose faith. We still want to work with you. A lot of people have been able to get their bleeding under control and stop having, such frequent menstruation with steaming. All right. Okay, there's more to this. Fibroadenomyosis. So this to me sounds like, so there's an endometriosis that's in the uterus. So this sounds similar to this, fibroids, some type of fibroid endometriosis mix. I do read up on like these medical conditions. I actually have like a bunch of gynecology books. So this is going to be a situation. I don't know all the specifics of it, but I do know that this is going to be a situation where there's uterine stagnation, because both endometriosis, adenomyosis, and fibroids are situations where there's uterine stagnation and possibly phlegm buildup. So yes, steam users have reported and seen benefits in all of those situations: fibroids, adenomyosis, and endometriosis. I would really like to solve this situation and understand if vaginal steaming can help, but also understand when is the best period and possibly if there are more suitable herbs. Because, for example, by mouth, I know that some are not all for these ailments. Okay, so yeah, anytime there's this frequent bleeding, you're only going to steam with herbs that are hemostatic herbs, blood stopping herbs. You cannot just use any herbs. You are very complicated, and also it's the situation that we really want to make sure that you are steaming with the right herbs and the hemostatic herbs. There are people who have missing periods. They haven't had their period in 3 years, and we give them herbs that bring on bleeding. For people like you who are dealing with what you're dealing with, we give herbs that would stop bleeding, or stop the frequency of the bleeding. Those are hemostatic herbs. These two different herbs are completely opposite. They have opposite properties. We're using, in this case, with the missing periods, herbs that stimulate bleeding. In this case, we're using herbs that stop bleeding. This is why this is actually my least favorite question, is what herbs do I need? Because I can't answer it. I can't just say, and because the same herbs aren't necessary for, the same herbs can't be used for everybody. Okay. So let me give you guys my answer to this question, my full answer to what herbs do I need. Also the same with the case of the surgery in these questions. I'll pull up the Q&A again. So what do I have here in my notes? I tell you, it's a question I answer all day long, and for some reason I still find it a hard question to answer. What herbs do I need? Okay, yes. So the way that I'm going to answer this for you guys today is, again, it depends on the steam user. Okay, there are different steam user types. We are not all the same. Okay, so so it depends on the steam user, and there's different steam user types. Actually, I'm glad about that last question. There are steam users who have uterine bleeding sensitivities. Okay, so steam users with uterine bleeding sensitivities means that they are likely to, they have uterine bleeding more frequently than everybody else. They are the most important user that I'm screening for. Now, you have to understand, somebody can have a uterine bleeding sensitivity in general, what that looks like are short menstrual cycles. Like I consider anything, somebody who's going to be like prone to uterine bleeding sensitivity. I look at the menstrual cycle length, the length of somebody's menstrual cycle, their overall cycle. So if somebody is bleeding, anyways, short cycles are like 25 days or shorter. But I also look at somebody who has a 26 or 27-day cycle, because to me, even though their cycle is, almost normal, like, or sorry, almost at that 28 days, they still have the, when they start steaming, a lot of times their cycle gets shorter. So I always screen for people who have short cycles, or who have fresh spotting throughout the month, or who have what they call 2 periods per month, like if they're having their period every 2 weeks. That's the first level that I'm going to screen for. And all my practitioners are trained to do this as well. So we're screening for people who have that uterine bleeding sensitivity, because we want to give them hemostatic herbs. Now, the hemostatic herbs are going to help with, they're going to target the fibroids just the same. They're going to target the endometriosis. They're going to help with the cramps. They're going to help with the PMS. But you're using the herbs based on that menstrual cycle. So what's happening is those herbs and that steam with that herb combination is going to, help to flush out, the stagnation, and it's going to do what it's going to do, while also helping to elongate the period. Okay. It can do both at the same time, because it's steam, and steam is very magical and very incredible. That's the first level of screening, is we're looking for these steam users with a uterine bleeding sensitivity. Okay. And they need hemostatic herbs. So now if you want to know, if you guys are, not all of you guys are in the US, I only ship my herbs within the United States, but the herbal blend that I create for the hemostatic herbal blend is called the gentle herbs, on my website, for those that want to know. And if you can tell that you're in that category, those are the herbs that you need. Whether or not you're steaming for cramps, whether or not you're steaming for fibroids, whether or not you're steaming for fertility, right? Like you're going to still want to steam with the herbs that help to elongate those cycles. Elongate your cycle, and are not going to cause more frequent bleeding, but are going to, cause your cycle to go towards that 28 days. So I do believe in something called the perfect period. In general, when I steamed, like my period got, started coming every 28 to 30 days, and it was 4 days of fresh red blood. And that it was like, oh, cool, I can tell my period is better. And then when I started recommending steaming to my friends, I couldn't believe it. I would like figure out what their period was like before, and then also after steaming. So this is, just my own personal research. I keep track of the before period and then the after period. And I couldn't believe it when all these periods started to go to the same thing, whether somebody was starting with a 40-day long period or a 14-day long period, as long as like they were going towards this 28 days. But I was also working with an acupuncturist and differentiating the herbs that I was giving them, so that they were steaming with the right herbs that they needed for the imbalances in their bodies. Okay. And so those imbalances now I call them the steam users, or the cycle types, or the steam user types. I forget what I have it, but on my menu on my website, let me just make sure it is there. Let's see what it's called. I have a menu that says, steam user types. And it will kind of explain like what this steam user type's period is like, or, symptoms are like, and then also what herbs are necessary for them and why, and I will say, I think it's part of my website and menu that doesn't get a lot of play, doesn't get a lot of interest, but again, this is the basis of how I'm determining what herbs somebody needs. So the first level of screening is to see if somebody has a uterine bleeding sensitivity. If so, they're always going to use hemostatic herbs. Okay. And the way that I create my herbs, there's a formula. So there's going to be an herb that helps with circulation, an herb that helps with disinfecting, an herb that helps with an herb for aromatherapy, because I think that the herbal formulas should smell good. I put a blood tonic in there because women, we lose blood more frequently, every month at least. So we need to nourish our blood. I put a kidney tonic in there because our kidneys are involved in that process. So I have a formula, like a base formula. But then if somebody has a uterine bleeding sensitivity, then we top off with hemostatic herbs, okay? So you see, like the formula is still going to help with the infections. It's still going to help with the other issues, also because the steam does that itself, okay? But they're getting the right herbs for their like period type, for their cycle type. And what's that's going to do is it's going to help them get a healthier overall menstrual cycle. What I call it the perfect period, but the true name for it would be a standard healthy cycle. It's a 28 to 30 day long cycle that begins and ends on fresh red blood. It's 4 days of fresh red blood, and there should not be any clots, cramps, or other period side effects. That's the standard healthy cycle. And it's controversial to say that the period should be 28 to 30 days long. On average, you can even say 29 days. But the reality is our menstrual cycle is tied to the moon. Just naturally, women are tied to the moon. And that's how long it takes the moon to revolve around the earth. And that's how long, I wouldn't have known, but now what I've seen after working with people is that when people correct any imbalances in their cycle, then they go to this 29-day cycle. It's really interesting. And when people have a 29-day cycle, they ovulate on day 14 and 15 and they get pregnant fast, right? So again, with fertility, I don't know if you have short cycles or if you have long cycles that are shorter than they should be, or cycles that are longer than they should be. If they're longer, I want to get them down to 29 days. If they're shorter, I want to get them up to 28 days. And I need different herbs for the longer cycle, and I need different herbs for the shorter cycle. So that's why I can't say what herbs are good for fertility. Okay. So somebody asked, I do like that question. How often do you need to steam to achieve a perfect cycle? For different people, they'll need to steam for a different amount of time, especially if depending on what the imbalances are. But in general, within 3 to 6 months, people can get there. 6 months if you're starting with a lot of challenges. 2 to 3 months for most people. And I'm gonna answer the question how often to steam at the end of this talk, because I'm gonna go into a lot of details with that as well. Again, these questions, I don't have like one sentence answers to these questions, because because I've been studying it so long, and I've looked at steaming with hundreds. So I worked one-on-one with clients, or helping people steam. I worked one-on-one with, I think, 773 people. I finally looked at my record. 773 people before I was like, okay, and I created a class to talk about the herb differentiation and how different users need different herbs. You can't just, give everybody the same herbs, or you can't just, recommend the same thing for everybody, and so forth. So, yeah. Okay, cool. So you guys, some of you guys are asking some questions in the chat. Make sure to put those questions in the Q&A, because the chat is gonna disappear and I might not be able to find your questions after, okay? Okay, so what type of herbs do you need? In general, I did try to make one formula that would work for everybody, but I couldn't do it. So I have a base formula that has like kind of all the properties that I want everybody to have, and then it's tailored. And so I have 4 different herb formulas. So one is focused on the people, it's a hemostatic herbal formula focused on people who have uterine bleeding sensitivities. And that is the top priority. So if you have that, then you know what herbs you need. The next priority herbs are going to be people so if people have excess heat in the body, hot flashes, and night sweats. These are the classic indicators of excess heat, and also maybe infections too. Then I actually like the cooling herbal blend. So again, we use all of the same herbs, all the properties that people need, but we use herbs that are going to help cool. So for example, we'll use mint, and different cooling herbs, okay? And then the third, I like to have a blend that if people don't have these other 2 issues, but they do have a lot of infections, then I have a blend that has really great disinfecting herbs in it. But again, the other formulas also have disinfecting herbs in it, but this one's just more focused on it. And then the 4th blend, or my cleansing herbal blend, is just a really great blend that's going to help with uterine cleansing. Okay, and so that's the way that I broke down my 4 herb formulas. But what I do want to say is that, you know, again, the 1,200 practitioners that I have trained around the world, they can do screening with you. Even myself, like if I'm talking to somebody, there's some things that I'm going to forget to ask, you know, so because of that, I created an intake form so that I can make sure to ask all of the questions. And honestly, the first level of that screening is making sure that you're not contraindicated. The second level of that screening is seeing what herbs are going to help to balance out your cycle properly, so that you're not just steaming for whatever concern you have, but that when you're doing that steaming, the herbs that you're using are going to be helping you move closer to a standard healthy cycle rather than further away from it, right? We don't want somebody with 25-day cycles to start steaming, and now those cycles go to 20 days, and then they go to 15 days, where that's moving the wrong way. If you get the right herbs, then your cycle will move towards the standard healthy cycle. And then it's also great to have a practitioner, because maybe you did grab the right herbs and something, you know, and if your period goes further away, then as a practitioner, what we would do is we adjust it. Oh, okay, what happened? Why is it moving that way? Maybe we need to double the hemostatic herbs that were used in there, or maybe we need to, you know, there's certain things and adjustments we make in order to get the cycle to move towards that standard healthy cycle. Okay. So it is great to work with you know, at least even all of my level 1 practitioners, they can all screen and figure out what herbs you need very quickly. But then there are people, those of you that are like, I'm not going to work with a practitioner. I want to know this by myself. That's why I'm here at this talk. I've given you a lot of information. I still don't think you have enough. It's enough. You know, I think you really want to look through like what the different properties are of these different herb formulas and of the steam user, and how to be able to select. I think it's great when people want to learn the information themselves. So my class, the first class that I have is PF1, Steam Facilitation Basics. Goes over the 4 different herbal formulas and the different sensitivities that different people have, and then how to choose the formulas based on those people's sensitivities, so that we make sure that we're at least starting with the right herbs for everybody. And the other part of that is we actually need to start with, you know, people know that they need to ask what herbs. Another question that you want to know is what steam duration should your steam session be? Should you be steaming for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes? This all matters, this all depends on the steam user type as well. So again, somebody might be steaming and, you know, they might be steaming because they have fibroids, but if they have night sweats and hot flashes and they're steaming for 45 minutes, it could be causing the hot flashes and night sweats to get worse. And that's wrong. You know what I mean? Like they only need to steam for a shorter amount of times and with less heat, because they already have excess heat in the body and they need cooling herbs. So I hope that's an example where you can understand like how much we do tailor this per person. And so, you know, with all the people in here, there's not one that's going to fit everybody. Okay. So my first, and then my second class is how to make easy to make vaginal steam herb formulas. So with my first 2 classes, you could learn everything that you need to steam, to figure out what herb formula you need, and then also how to make it yourself, if that's the way that you want to go, which I would love to have you in class. And I'll give you guys more information about that at the end of the talk. I have a special for you guys, a special discount. Okay, so how often to steam? So I really love, you know, steaming weekly. I like weekly steaming because there are 4 phases of our menstrual cycle. Like there's 4 weeks, you know, in the month, right? So by the way, month is actually a word that means moon, and menstrual means moon. So like as women, our timeline, our menstrual cycle is tied to the month, and it's tied to the moon. Okay, these are all actually one and the same. So anyway, so there's 4 weeks in our cycle, and there's kind of different things that are happening, you know, each week. And so when you're steaming weekly, what you're doing is you're increasing the circulation in your uterus. You're bringing blood flow to your uterus, and so you are improving the uterus's ability to do whatever it needs to be doing at that time. So weekly steaming is pretty killer. You know, it can really get, you know, a lot of progress done by just going ahead and steaming weekly. Another thing that I would recommend, another steam schedule I would recommend, is steaming before and after the period. Okay, so at least once after the period. And if there are like stagnation issues like cramps or clots, brown blood, and so forth, it's really great to steam before the period comes. So you want to steam on like days. Again, people have different cycle lengths, so it depends on like, how long your period is, but like it's really great to steam on menstrual cycle day 23, 24, and 25. So, like the week before the period is coming, you can steam 3 days in a row, and then, leave a couple days, and then the period comes. The reason why you leave a couple days, sometimes when people steam too close to the period goes missing. So, and then sometimes when if people steam too far away, the period, onsets. And this a lot of times happens because people, aren't using the right herbs or aren't steaming for the right duration and so forth. But in general, I recommend steaming 3 days in a row before the period if there are stagnation issues. And, and you can combine those. You can steam weekly. And then if you're on the weekend and your period is supposed to come, steam 3 days in a row, and those are two really great schedules where you will see great results and great progress. Now, for people who have very complicated situations, the case of the surgery, the case of the fibroadenomyosis, these are cases where you really want to talk to the peristeam hydrotherapist, and they can give you tailored steam plans to target the specific issues going on. With fertility, if somebody is really serious about getting pregnant and really wants to try steaming, the blind steaming, the weekly steaming, again, might help. But it's really helpful when we can go in and look at what menstrual cycle imbalances someone has. So I looked at, I use a lot of, and I do a lot of reading, both with Western gynecological books and then traditional Chinese medicine books, TCM and acupuncture. And I'm neither. I'm not a doctor, nor am I an acupuncturist, but I do a lot of reading because there's, specifically in traditional Chinese medicine, there's just so much information about the cycle. They can diagnose all just based on the cycle, So for example, brown blood means that there's, they would call it liver qi stagnation, which in our case, I call it uterine stagnation. There's stagnation buildup in the uterus, it's just really helpful. And my points, I lost my train of thought. Sorry, I know I had something there. Okay, so yes. Okay. I know what I was saying. So the level 2 peristeam hydrotherapists who have trained with me have done a lot of reading. They've read about endometriosis, fibroids. They've read about traditional Chinese medicine and the different imbalances that cause those issues and the different herbs that are used, in those situations. And then we've thought about the different steam schedules that are used. And there are some people that we will get steaming every day if possible. But for example, somebody with fibroadenomyosis who has frequent bleeding cannot steam every day, but somebody with fibroadenomyosis, again, fibroids and, and such in the uterus, who is postmenopausal, they can steam every day, or it depends, if they have excess heat, then they can't. So it's just like, we really will look at what's going on with this person and create a steam schedule that works for them. Okay. All right, so I think I answered the question, how often to steam. I would love to see everybody in the world I would just love to see everybody for like at least just 3 months, steam weekly for 3 months. And just what happens is you see changes in your period. Now, will it get you to the standard healthy, to that perfect period? For sure. It just depends. It depends on what you're starting with. Sometimes people blindly just steam weekly and they get to that perfect period. Other people got, more going on, and it's important, and that's not going to do it alone, but it starts to move you in the right direction as long as you're getting the right herbs and the right steam. You have the right steams duration, like you're steaming for the right amount of minutes. It's going to be moving you closer into that direction. Okay. All right, what else? Also, what's my time like? Is it? Oh, okay. So it's been an hour and 10 minutes. Okay. Okay. So then, how to get started is the final question. So I think that a lot of times steaming for the first time is the hardest. Like, I think that's like the biggest hurdle to overcome, is just to do it. Not for everybody, but for most people, it just seems like the biggest hurdle. I really like steaming with, I really recommend steaming with a practitioner if possible the first time. There are steam studios everywhere. Go to my directory, you guys, on my website. There's a directory and you can find the steam practitioners in your area. Of course, there aren't steam practitioners everywhere in the world from on my directory, but for the most part, you might be able to find a steam practitioner in your area. Hit them up. You know, I have their contact information. Go to their website or whatever, and make an appointment with them and go and do your first steam session. That's a great way to do it, okay? Because you go, you do it. They make sure that it's not too hot. You know, you have a pleasant experience, and now you've steamed. And usually when you steam, it's, first of all, it feels really great, and second of all, it's just like, oh, that doesn't, you know, it's not that big of a deal. It's just like taking a shower, you know, or like, I mean, taking a bath for a baby, if you've ever tried to, but it's first, it's like, it can be crazy, but you know, you get so used to it, right? Like, so steaming is just one of those things where it's like, oh, it feels good. Oh, and it feels very natural to do it. You know, it's not a big deal. So doing it with a steam, you know, practitioner, for the first time is a really great way to go. Then you're also they're going to screen you to figure out the right herbs that you need. They're going to screen you to figure out what the right setup for you is and how long you should be steaming. You have all of that in one. And then not only that, if you want to steam at home, they can teach you how to steam at home, and they might have supplies. They might have like a, you know, steam boxes that they sell. Here's my steam box, you guys, that I use at home. This sauna maker doesn't make it anymore, but this is my steam box. It's empty right now, but I would take a pot and put it in here. You guys can work towards a home setup if you want. Here's my pot, and then I have herbs, or you can even steam with just water. So you know, this runs you about $300 to $400 total for your setup, and then you're set. You use it, you know, for life, right? So, but there's also ways where you can steam. You can just you know, you can just put the pot on the ground and you can kneel over it, you know. And if you go to the user guide on my website, I show you how to steam without needing a sauna. So there's home setups that are available. But again, if you go to a practitioner first, they can talk you through this. You can tell them, hey, I want to steam at home. Like, how can I do so? And they'll give you tips for that. And if they have herbs, then you can buy herbs from them and so forth. Again, now, some people don't want to go to a practitioner first, so that's great. I will take you into my classes then, you know. So that way you can screen for the herbs, figure out the right duration, figure out the right setup, and also figure out, you know, your supplies. As far as getting supplies, for those that know that they want to steam at home, there is a sauna marketplace on my website where sauna makers, you know, advertise their saunas there. So just keep in mind, those are third-party sauna makers. So if you start asking me about the shipping times and stuff like that, I don't know. You have to go, you know, you go to my website and you can see the different saunas. Go ahead and click through to those websites, and then you would order there. Okay. But I do that because, again, one of the things is, where do I get a sauna? So I created that sauna marketplace so that you can see some options. Okay. And easily, you know, purchase a sauna there. Okay, so and then I do sell herbs, but I only sell herbs within the United States. So for those of you outside of the US, you'll want to, again, go to that directory, find the practitioners in your country, or, you know, in your area, or who ship to your country. And, you know, a lot of the practitioners make herbs. You can even filter for herbs. When you're looking at my directory, there's a way to search. I'm searching for herbs, and then it will only show you the practitioners who make herbs, and then you can, you know, see who's closest and who can get herbs to you. If you're working with my practitioners, they all know about these 4 herb formulas, and in order for them to even pass and get certified, they have to have 4 very good herbal formulas. Okay, so you know you're getting good herbal formulas that are going to be doing the right thing for you if you're working with my directory. Okay. Okay, so then if anybody has advanced issues, you really should work with a peristeam hydrotherapist. You should do a consultation, okay? And that consultation, the peristeam hydrotherapist will also help you get set up. You know, you can ask them, you know, what you want more information about. And when I train my peristeam hydrotherapist, part of the first level of training, part of one of the things that they have to do is make sure that the client is able to steam. The really great thing about the peristeam hydrotherapist is that they all do virtual appointments. There's not a ton of peristeam hydrotherapists, and we set up and do virtual consultations so that we can, work with people wherever they are. And then since we're working virtually, part of what we do is really make sure, okay, what kind of setup do you want to do? Do you need recommendations for saunas? Do you need to know where to buy herbs? And we make sure to fill those holes, like work with somebody to make sure that they have all the supplies needed to be able to steam at home. We also might find somebody in the town, a facilitator, a steam facilitator that they can go to our steam studio. Oh, okay, you can go over to this steam studio, this practitioner. Or if you want a mobile, there's some steam practitioners have a mobile steam setup, or a mobile steam service, so they'll come to your house and steam right at your house. So the peristeam hydrotherapist, when you're doing that advanced level consultation, will help to make sure to connect you if you want somebody to go and do your first steam session at the home or whatever that might be. Okay. So, and then, okay, for folks who want to do it yourself, I've been really thinking about this, and, I don't think that steaming is one size fits all. You guys know that by now. And in general, I train steam practitioners, but for somebody who just wants the information to steam themselves at home, I was looking at my certification, and it's the first 3 classes are PF1, PF2, and PF3, Peristeam Facilitator 1, 2, and 3, okay? And so this is a class called Steam Facilitation Basics. It's number 1. Number 2 is easy to make vaginal steam herb formulas. And then number 3 is womb cleanse care, okay? Which is all about menstrual care guidelines. If you take these 3 classes, you have everything that you need to know to steam yourself safely and with the right herbs and for the right amount of time, and you have the steam schedule and so forth. And so that's what I would want to call my do-it-yourself bundle, is the first 3 classes, PF1, PF2, and PF3. Again, and I'm a do-it-yourselfer, so I really understand those of you that want to do it yourself, but I think that those are the 3 classes that have the full information, because you can go to YouTube and see somebody steaming in a plastic bucket on the toilet, but I don't know. I don't think you should steam with plastic, and I think the plastic is tainting the herbs, and also I don't think the toilet is the most hygienic way to do it. And also you can steam, but unless you know how to take care of your next period that comes through, you might end up with more cramps, et cetera, et cetera. Now, if those first 3 classes, that's the way to do it. Those 2 classes, the third class on womb cleanse care is free. But the first and then the other 2 are $194 each, so it's $388 total for that package of those 3 classes. So that's what I'm going to recommend for those of you that know that you want the knowledge yourself. Now, if you want to steam others, then you have to do the full level 1 certification, okay, which is 9 classes total. And the final class, you have to create these herbal formulas, and we look at them and help work, and adjust them and make sure that they're proper, and that they're going to work. And then you work with a practice client. You do practice sessions, okay? So that is really, and also we examine the person on their knowledge. So people don't just take the classes and automatically get a certificate. In order to if somebody has my certification, they've gone through exams and practice, and we've ensured that they have safe setups and that their herbal formulas are formulated correctly, okay? So if you do want that certification, then you go ahead and you do the entire level 1, okay? And then if you want to continue on, then the level 2 certification goes into so many more details. These are the peristeam hydrotherapists, where they can really work with all gynecological and obstetrical issues and know how to use steaming in those particular situations. For example, we use steaming as first aid for postpartum, if there are any issues, with first aid, for example, if somebody is in labor and they're having a stalled labor, we would use steaming at that point. And there's a lot of different situations that we would use steaming. And it's really a full education on women's health issues from both a Western medicine point of view and Eastern medicine point of view, and as well as like how to use steaming in all of those situations. So really cool. Okay, so that is my talk. I do have a discount. I think, let me just check my website and make sure it's up. I had it set to turn on after this talk. Yes. If you go to my website, you'll see that I put everything on sale for you guys. So I have everything on sale for 35% off all of the courses. So anybody who wants to go and do that bundle, if anybody here is a birth worker or, you know, works in holistic health, a naturopathic doctor, and acupuncture, I love it when you guys get certified. A lot of massage therapists are getting certified. A lot of spa owners are getting certified. So if massage therapists, I don't know if I said that yet, even chiropractors are getting certified. So a lot of people in the holistic health field are getting certified. The spa industry are getting certified, and birth workers. Okay, so you guys have that for 35% off. But I did do a special little thing, which was I set it for the first 10 people to go through the checkout would get an additional 10% off. So it will be 45% off for the first 10 people who make purchases. So that is currently set right now. The prices are set for 35% off, but then the first 10 who go through the cart will get an additional 10% knocked off when they're going through the cart. So my website is steamychick.com, and it will forward you to steamychick.institute if you go there, or you can type in steamychick.institute. Anyways, I thank you all for being here. Now I am going to answer all of your questions. Okay, so again, the chat, I usually only see what is, no, there's no code for the discount. It's already, I already set it automatic. It will just deduct in the cart for you. And then the additional 10% will automatically deduct. This sale is gonna be live until next Monday. People are saying, thank you so much. It was lovely to see you. Yeah, thank you guys so much. Okay. Okay, cool. All right, let's look at these. I'm gonna go ahead and look at the Q&A. I'm looking at the chat. Again, it's hard for me to, I gotta scroll up with the chat, but I'm gonna come over to the Q&A. So if you have a question, that even if you put it in the chat, go ahead and put it in the Q&A right now so I can make sure to answer all of your questions. Okay, would steaming help with labial papules or cysts? Okay, so the labia, these are the vaginal lips. It's the outside of the vagina. It's the outside of the vulva. If there are any papules or cysts there, yeah, that's actually one of the easiest, things that steaming can help with. Just the same as steaming would help with any what do you call them? Like skin imperfections here. If there are any, those are all skin imperfections. Cysts are actually just filled with fluid. A cyst is actually similar to what a pimple would be. It's the same thing. It's filled with fluid. So just as steaming is helpful, like a hot shower to drain a pimple on the face, steaming is going to be useful to drain a pimple or a cyst on the labia. And it's such a great thing to use steaming for because the steaming just hits it directly. Problems in the ovaries, an ovarian cyst or fibroids up in the uterine cavity, the steam has to already get to them, has to get all the way up there, which it can. It increases the circulation and helps the uterus do its job. So it works, but if it's on the labia, it just hits it directly. So it's a really great thing to use steaming for. Sorry. I don't want to make any claims. Steaming has helped people in those situations, and it seems like a very easy way to get to the problem. I can't make medical claims, but yeah, steaming has been beneficial for that. Oops. Okay, so can we steam with a copper IUD contraceptive? Yeah, I do like it to be modified though. I recommend a modified steam session. Through hearsay, I have heard of 3 IUDs that fell out. I have never worked with a client whose IUD fell out, but I do modify the steam session. So I like only like a short 10-minute steam session for people who have IUDs. Okay. How does plugging the vagina with intravaginal menstrual device like the sponge or the tampon cause stagnation? Well, the period is a uterine cleanse. And so what happens is the uterine blood vessels open and send some blood down into the uterus, and then that flushes everything in the uterus out, like the uterine lining. And then the cervix is open during that time, and it flushes down out through the cervix. And then what needs to happen? It needs to go down the vaginal canal and out. If it has anything in there, then that makes it so that it can't flush out as properly. Now, I've seen what is said about tampons. Like when they were first introduced, it was says, oh, like this was something that was that a lot of people were concerned about, that they wouldn't be able to get their, that full, flushing. And they said, oh, well, the tampons are absorbent. It's cotton and it's absorbing it, so it should be fine. But a lot of people will notice that they have cramps when they have tampons in. All they have to do is remove the tampon and their uterus stops cramping. Again, the uterus knows that something's blocking, so it starts contracting. That's one case. Other people have used tampons or plug products and don't have any cramps or anything. But what you will notice is that there's brown blood or black blood or clots or cramps. These are all signs of stagnation. So if somebody can use a plug product and not have any of these signs of stagnation, then they can use the plug product. But in general, you have to let it flow. And putting a plug product in there isn't allowing that flow for a healthy uterine cleanse. I did a survey of over 2,000 women's periods, and over 90% had signs of stagnation. So clots, brown blood, black blood, or cramping, which is the secondary condition. If you have these things, then you have the cramping, right? And that's the uterus actually helping to try to expel the stuff. So I do think that there's several culprits as to why, but one of them is just, again, we don't know the proper period care because we're not taught that. And the plug-in products tend to be one of the culprits. Okay, follow up to this question about bleeding a lot. My cycle is shorter, about 24 to 26 days. Would regular steaming help me get a longer cycle, or will it be contraindicated since my cycle is shorter? No, steaming is not contraindicated in this case. The person where it was contraindicated was bleeding, she was bleeding frequently and spotting frequently, like on a daily basis, and her period was coming. It sounded like less than 3 weeks, like every 2 weeks, basically. So that's a contraindication because really it's just too much bleeding. In your case, if you steam with the wrong herbs and for the wrong amount of time, it would cause your cycle to get shorter. If you steam with the right herbs for the right amount of time, it would likely cause your period to get longer. Your cycle to get longer, to that 28 days. Yenny, with those who suffer from PCOS, sometimes we experience heavy bleeding and not the absence of menses. Yeah. Again, that's why I can't just say, oh, you have PCOS, then you need these herbs. I need to know what somebody's cycle is like. Like, do you have PCOS and frequent bleeding? Do you have PCOS and absent periods? Those are two different herbal formulas I'm going to recommend. I know earlier you mentioned that steaming may help with PCOS, but if we have or are having excessive bleeding, would this help? Again, my level 2 steam practitioner, parasteam hydrotherapist, are trained to help somebody get their bleeding under control as the first level, and then secondly, introduce the steaming. So you can use the herbs, from the very beginning to get the bleeding under control. And then there are also really important things. They're going to look at what triggers what uterine, we call it actually, sorry, I haven't mentioned this term, uterine fatigue is the imbalance that causes that excess bleeding. So we're going to look at what uterine fatigue triggers are going on and help work through that first, as well as help you manage and get the bleeding under control. Then the second thing that we're going to do is start the steaming. But yes, definitely, especially if you're dealing with PCOS, I think steaming can be beneficial. Thanks for that question. What herbs are good for fibroids? Hey, Feriel, from Ethiopia. So again, the all herbs are going to be good for fibroids. Sorry, steam, let me say this. Steam itself is going to be good for fibroids, but as far as what herbs somebody needs, we're going to be looking at their menstrual cycle pattern in order to determine what herbs they need. Does steaming help with hormonal imbalances and breast pain in premenstrual phase? Which herbs could work? Great question, Sophia. Yeah, a lot of people report a decrease in that breast soreness and breast pain. It is one of the things that has to do with stagnation. And so usually increasing that, the steaming helps to increase circulation. And it's one of the things that, I wouldn't say, oh, steaming directly helps reduce breast pain. But when people steam, they notice a decrease or that their breast pain and soreness goes away. So, so it definitely can be something that's helpful. And then if steaming helps with hormonal imbalances, I believe it does. I think that, again, we have a 4-week cycle, and each week the hormones are doing different things, and so without going into too many details, that weekly steaming, I feel like really helps to, to giving that increased circulation to the uterus, on that weekly basis really helps to get the, it's helping the uterus to complete that hormonal cycle in the way that it's supposed to be done. So it helps the uterus to be able to correct whatever imbalances are going on. But I mean, absolutely, absolutely, people see improvement with hormonal imbalances with steaming. And in fact, there's this really cool class in my level 2 certification called taught by midwife Raquel, and it's called pelvic steaming and your anatomy. And she talks about all of the different hormones and then where they are located. Like I took the class myself. There are hormone receptors up, like ascending the vaginal canal, right? So the steam, if it's in the if it ascends the vaginal canal, basically it's stimulating, these hormone receptors, right? And so so there's anything that you do basically, to the vagina and uterus, to the inner and external genitalia, is basically going to be impacting the hormones. And in the case of steaming, it appears to be impacting it positively. Would steam help with painful intercourse after labor? Yes. So I actually think that it should be standard practice, and it's something peristeam hydrotherapists work with people. I really like them to work with their clients. It depends on the client, but again, the information, we still need more information about what we can do with steaming. And that's why I'm so glad you all are here. But for the most part, you can, before somebody even returns to intimacy after giving birth, they would do steaming. And then if they do their postpartum steaming, then it's, if there are any stitches, if there's any scar tissue, the steaming is already helping with those things. And then when it is time, when the person's ready to return to intimacy, then we would have them, first of all, you want to make sure to address any of those birth injuries, and then you would use steaming before returning to intimacy. So if there is pain because there's scar tissue, well, that scar tissue we would want to work with that scar tissue, steaming to help to soften that scar tissue. And then we would recommend the return to intimacy at that point. And yes, you can use steaming prior to intimacy. Hi. What might be the indication of steaming for if someone has a 28 cycle, which then reduces down after steaming. I would want to look at the herbs, how long you're steaming, and what setup you're using. And I would want to adjust those so that your cycle doesn't go shorter. We can get it back up to that 28 days. And then that you would be able to steam safely with it staying like that. And again, this happens all the time. And it's, people find out about information about steaming online and they, or whatever it might be, or they work with practitioners who, maybe don't have like the full training like my practitioners do. So it happens all the time. And then there's just some adjustments that would need to be made. So again, I don't know. And then sometimes you might use, sometimes it even happens when somebody's using my herbal formula, my hemostatic herbal formula, which I know extends cycles, but sometimes somebody still has that one off with the shorter. So again, there's some adjustments that can be made because that steam user is extra sensitive, So that's why it's really great to work with a practitioner who knows what to expect and knows what adjustments can be made. So for regular maintenance, the cleansing herb blends would be okay. If you have a 28 to 30 day cycle and you're just steaming for maintenance, then that is a really great herbal blend. And that's the herbal blend that I use. Okay, Ramona, I paid for your steaming course a while ago to become a steam practitioner. I never took the class. I do want to take the class. Will I have to repay for the class? No. I have everybody's records. And in fact, the course platform I was using before shut down. So then we built our own course platform, the Steamy Chick Institute. And so, I would recommend going to the chat box at steamychick.com and just, the information you have here, just enter there and I'll look up your information and send you the link so that you can go do your classes. So then also the question, does steaming help with bloating and blockages in fallopian tubes? Yeah, one of the first people that I worked with, she had blocked fallopian tubes and the steaming naturally cleared those blocked fallopian tubes. And then bloating is one of the things that people, like when you look at the pelvic steam testimonial database, that's one of the things that they report going down. It seems to go down with steaming. Okay, in terms of period care, do menstrual sponges fall in the same category as tampons? Sadly, they do. I like those little sponges. They're really cool and everything. But they do create a plugging type of effect. Oh, that's your favorite. She says that's her favorite. See if you can do it and still have, if you can do it and get to a healthy, if you can have zero signs of stagnation while using those sponges, then you're fine. I haven't seen it, but maybe it's possible. Different people are different, but you don't want any signs of black blood. You don't want your period to start with brown discharge. You don't want it to end in brown discharge. You don't want to have any clots and you don't want to have any cramps. So if you can use the sponges and still have a healthy period like that, then that will be great. It's also the same with the cups. Some people can use cups and have no stagnation, and then other people cannot use the cups. Like they have to stop using the cups because they still have stagnation with it. So it just depends sometimes on the person. But I haven't yet seen the sea sponges, but also the sea sponges aren't, they're not that, I don't know how common they are. So maybe they're the same as the cups, and that some people can use them without having stagnation. But yeah, try it out, check it out. And also, Camille, make sure you take the class on womb cleanse care, the PF3 class. That's for free. I'd be interested to see you do like all the womb cleanse care and see if you can get those. And that would be helpful because a lot of people really are used to like tampons, and they don't like, like say pads or something like that. Are there some conditions better treated with wet versus dry steaming? Great question. Yes. I think that dry steaming is probably better when it comes to dry steaming is more closing, and I would say wet steaming is more opening. So I actually think that dry steaming is better in cases where there are uterine bleeding sensitivities and where there is uterine fatigue. I don't work with dry steaming. I tried it. I tried dry steaming and my period, again, came like 2 weeks late, so like dry steaming is, it's its own, it's its own specialization. And so I would probably want to, I would need to learn more about it if I were to use it and recommend it. Where my area of specialization is using steam and herbs, and how to adjust them in the cases of uterine bleeding sensitivities. I do think that the dry steaming is a really probably a really great way to go in the cases of the uterine bleeding sensitivities. And yeah, I do think that I'll continue to learn more about that and maybe how to differentiate that. I do find it a little bit more of a fire hazard, and a little bit harder to figure out how to set it up and a little bit more difficult. But I think that as we bring the steaming back and we learn how to do the steaming, I think that will naturally then start to integrate the dry form of steaming in the cases that would be more useful. But feel free to learn more about it and check it out. There are people who do that form of steaming, and you would have to find one of them to learn from. Is there a payment plan for the whole bundle? So this is how I do my payment plans. You can sign up for everything all at once, or you can sign up course by course. If you sign up course by course, you're just leading yourself through, smaller payments rather than, one big payment. So, right, if you want to get the sale price is valid through Monday. So if you sign up for, say, PF, the first course or the first module, at the sale price, the other courses, once that sale is off, they're going to be the regular price. So sign up for as many classes as you can that your budget allows right now with the sale in order to get that price. Okay, a couple more questions here. What about scarring from the Assure tuba ligation? Oh, yeah, can this help that deep? So I'm not sure. I think that, again, the steaming helps to increase the circulation to the uterus. I don't know if like it can help with the scar tissue that far up. I do think that it might. I think that it doesn't hurt to try it. So again, will steaming help with it? It's like, try steaming and see if it helps with, any of those symptoms, see if it helps reduce them. If it does, then continue. And if it doesn't, then, but yeah, I don't think that, I mean, I do know of somebody who has some really bad Assure scarring and some really gnarly symptoms and stuff. And she's steaming and she's seeing improvement with certain things, but she's continuing to deal with other things as well, at least the last that I spoke to her. But I only spoke to her like the first, I think, before she started steaming, and then maybe after the first month. I haven't heard how she's doing now after a longer time period. She was in my classes to learn steaming and was sharing about the situation. Anyhow, I really do hope that the steaming can be helpful. Is the level 2 the certification bundle? So anyways, I said, I was talking about a little bundle of like PF1, PF2, and PF3. I would say that's the do-it-yourself bundle. But as far as for the certification, there's the level 1 certification, and it's pretty well outlined on the website. The level 1 certification are the first 9 modules, and then the level 2 certification, again, it's a lot more in depth, is 23 modules. And so yes, you will need all of the level 1 modules, which is 9 courses to get certified with the level 1 Peristeam Facilitator certification. And then you need all of the level 2 courses, the 23 courses to get certified with the level 2 Peristeam Hydrotherapist certification. Now, if you take the classes, like those first 3 classes, just because you want to do it yourself, that's great. I recommend doing it for yourself. But if you're going to be working with other people, then I do recommend getting certified. I think it's the responsible thing to do, because then you get a chance. I have a chance to look at your herbs and make sure that your formulas are, formulated correctly, and that you're steaming everybody in a safe way, and that you have all the knowledge necessary. Okay. Hey, I was granted the scholarship opportunity. Yes, I have scholarships to pay for the vaginal steam facilitator course. Am I able to use the code on top of the discount? No, the scholarship code doesn't apply on top of the sale. Yeah, it is the largest discount that I offer are for the scholars, but if it applies on top of this, it's already like dirt cheap, when you have that scholar code. So the scholar coupon is the best way to go. Camille, which steam blends would be appropriate for a shorter cycle? So yeah, I like I would recommend the hemostatic herbal blends. If you're using my herbs, I named it gentle, the gentle herbs. How old was the oldest female who has gotten pregnant after steaming? I don't just work with fertility clients. I would love to, but so I'm working with people as I was working with people as they were coming to me, and now I send everybody to my practitioners. But the oldest that I know of is 45. Sorry, the oldest I know of is 45. Yeah, Jessica, let me check out. I don't know if it's not letting you enter that coupon. So let me check that out. I'll write down your name to follow up with you. You should be able to still use it even with the sale on. So I'll check that out. But I'm glad you're going to be in the classes. Okay. Okay, you guys, I got through the Q&A down below. We still got 18 people here. Oh, thanks everybody for staying till the end. Okay, thank you guys. Habiba is sending me an email for the replay. Make sure that you were signed up on the original list. Then I'm going to send out the replay to the people who were signed up for the webinar. So if that is your email, then that's fine. But if that's another email, then maybe go sign up right quick. So that way you'll get that. Liz says, the session was super informative. I really appreciate you taking all this time to answer all of our questions. For sure. Thank you guys. Spread the word. Steaming has been spreading through online talks like this. It's been spreading through word of mouth. So, keep on doing it. Keep on getting the word out there. All right, you guys. So I'll send out this replay. I will send out some emails with the resources that I mentioned. And, again, if you want to get the discount, if you want to get that 45% off, go ahead and, try to get through the cart before the first 10 gets through. If not, that's fine. It will automatically go to 35% if you're not one of the first 10 people through the cart. So anyways, I look forward to seeing you guys in class. I look forward to seeing you guys online. And at least everybody make sure that you take the free class on womb cleanse care with the menstrual care guidelines. And I'll see all of you guys soon. Bye.